Hey everybody, welcome back. Thank you for coming. Today we are talking with our friend Cameron from Crisis Services. So Cameron, can you tell me a little bit about what Crisis Services does and what its mission is?
Sure. So we do a ton in Erie County. We've been an agency since 1968, and we started primarily for suicide prevention. So we're actually called Suicide Prevention and Crisis Services. So we started to do suicide response. That was like our main mission. But we've since branched out. So a lot of what we do is mental health, crisis response, suicide prevention, and those types of things. So we have a lot of different programs that operate around that. We have a 24-hour hotline. It's 834-3131. And that is kind of a really good catch-all phone number. So what we do on that line is somebody can call if they're in crisis, if they're feeling suicidal, if they have a friend or family member they're worried about who might be feeling suicidal. And we have a team of specially trained mental health professionals that will come out and do an assessment to try to keep people safely in their home. We're trying to keep people out of the hospital system and keep them safe in their home as much as humanly possible, right? So that's kind of that main hotline, what they do. And then from there, we have the team, the mobile outreach team that actually does the work of going out and assessing someone in their home, keeping them safe in their home. But then I'm from the Advocate Department of Crisis Services. So the Advocate Department is the Rape Crisis Center for the county. Every county in New York State has a designated Rape Crisis Center, and we are it for Erie County. So that means a lot of things, but the number one thing that means is that we respond to area hospitals 24/7, 365 to assist survivors of domestic and sexual violence. What's really cool about New York State is that in New York State, you can make your own health choices as a teen, as a preteen actually. So we serve people ages 12 and up, completely confidentially. So we have clients as young as 12 that we get called to in the hospital. Maybe they've experienced sexual violence, and we sit with them, talk to them about their rights, sit with them through the exam, advocate for them to kind of be able to make their own best decisions for their body. We sit with them while they're talking to the police if they want to talk to the police, because that can be not a comfortable situation for everyone. We understand that. So we sit with people and help them do that if they want to. And what's really nice about our younger folks, our younger clients, is we don't have to tell their parents if they're working with us. If we have a teen that's experienced domestic or sexual violence, and their mom calls and says, "Why is my kid having a victim advocate from Crisis Services?" We're not telling them anything without that client's permission. And that goes for our therapy too. We have free therapy for sexual violence, for sexual assault survivors, and that's free for 12-year-olds as well. And again, we don't need parents' permission to work with them. And our therapist, her name is Jessica, she's really great. She will do talks with clients on the phone, Zoom. When school is in session, she'll go to schools and meet with kids, like in the guidance counselor office. If a young client is having trouble getting down to our office, she will go to them at like their school or some other safe place to meet with them. So just trying to really tailor it to everyone. We help people get their medical bills paid for if they're in the hospital for domestic or sexual violence. We have case managers that help people go to the hospital, and all of our services are totally free and still going on during COVID. It looks a little bit different. Like obviously we can't go to the hospital, but I actually already spent this morning on the phone with 2 different clients that were hospitalized, kind of doing emotional in-person or emotional on the phone crisis counseling, linking them with our services, and then a case manager is going to help them with that longer term work later. Yeah, and then I go into schools and talk about sexual violence, sexual assault, knowing your rights. I'm a really big proponent of knowing what your rights are and knowing what your options are, especially as a teen. We don't do a really good job of talking to preteens and teens and kiddos about what is available to them. And so I really like being able to do that in schools when we're able to be in schools.
It's very cool. So I talk about minors' rights a lot when it comes to like Planned Parenthood.
Love minors' rights, yeah.
Yeah, I never even considered it with crisis services and sexual assault and things like that. But it definitely makes sense that it continues into that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if somebody has been hurt by a parent or guardian, obviously we have to call, Child Protective Services or maybe even the police to make sure that kiddo is safe. But most of the time I'm seeing, younger clients, 15, 16, 17, who something happened to them and they're for whatever reason, and that's their own business, they're not comfortable telling their parents. We know, I'd like to believe that all parents are safe and lovely, but I know that that's not the case. And so I know for some young folks that telling mom or dad this happened to me might not lead to more safety. So I really like to be able to tell teens, we will work with you, we will help you, and we won't tell your parents, even if your parents call us yelling, which they have. Yeah. And that's fine. They can yell at us as much as they want. We're not going to violate anybody's rights to privacy and confidentiality.
Definitely. And so you said if someone's being abused at home, you might have to call police or CPS. You follow probably like mandated reporter rules and things like that.
Oh, I'm sorry. My dog's barking. Working from home is super fun.
During the last interviews I was doing, my dog started barking during it, and I was like, oh, God.
Yeah. I'm used to it now. My dogs should be used to it too, but apparently they're not.
Yeah. I live on Hurdle, and so like almost every time I'm doing a video, a fire truck goes behind me. Mm-hmm. I feel you. Yeah. But can you just explain like the mandated reporting kind of thing a little bit? Like when can a teenager say they don't want you to call the police versus when you have to?
So there actually are no laws in New York State that say you have to report sexual violence. Okay. Even like a victim has to report. It gets a little tricky with weapons. So if somebody was sexually assaulted and there was a gun or knife used as a threat during the sexual assault, the hospital staff that, is hearing about it has to tell the police so that the police are aware that, there might be a serial rapist with a gun, running around the West Side or whatever. But that's it. That doesn't mean that the victim needs to file a police report. The victim doesn't need to go forward with charges. They don't need to get a rape kit done. They don't need to do any of that. They can just, the hospital just has to say a gun or knife was used in a commission of a sexual assault. For minors, same thing. There's no law that says the sexual assault of a minor needs to be followed up with the police or Child Protective Services unless that minor was sexually assaulted by a parent or guardian, or parent or guardian knew about it and didn't do anything to help. So like, say for example, there's a 13-year-old girl who goes and gets after school care from a neighbor down the street and comes and tells mom, while I'm there, the babysitter does this, this, and this to me. If mom continues then to send that young girl over to that babysitter's house and doesn't do anything to keep her safe, then we have to call CPS against mom because mom isn't keeping her daughter safe. But if, that young lady tells mom this happened and then mom pulls her out of daycare there and tries to get her some like medical, physical care if she needs it, then nothing is needed. But say, you have a 16-year-old boy who was sexually assaulted at a party. There's no, by another 16-year-old boy, there's no parental need or anything like that for Child Protective Services to be called at all. And that's kind of a big misconception. Mm-hmm. I work with a lot of schools on that, of talking to them about Child Protective Services, because some school counselors have told me, well, whenever a teen tells me anything, I just call CPS. And I'm like, well, okay, well, they can't do anything, A, so it's a waste of their time and your time. But B, just in case the CPS worker decides to do the wrong thing and follow up with mom and dad, I don't want, a teen's story or anybody's story about what happened to them told to somebody and they're not ready mm-hmm. for that. Especially if we're talking about an LGBTQ plus youth, and that can be outing them, that can be adding, further harm from them, from their family, whatever it is. It's just not right to tell somebody's sexual assault story without their permission.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And then with like your, you talked about your like 24-hour hotline with suicide and things like that. Do you guys refer to other agencies then?
Yeah. So for our suicide prevention efforts, we deal with people ages 18 and up. So
Okay.
we come out to the home, assess their safety and things like that. An agency called Spectrum Cares does under the age of 18, where they have the same kind of system. Well, they'll have trained counselors come out to the teen's home and work with them to try to keep them safely in the home. But our 834-3131 number is a really good catch-all for anything. So it catches, if somebody is feeling suicidal, or maybe somebody is, struggling with a drug addiction and they want some resources to get help for that, they can call that number. Maybe somebody is experiencing homelessness, they can call that number. Or maybe somebody is just trying to get a hold of me to come do a presentation at their school, they can call that number too. So, our trained counselors on there really don't know what they're walking into when they pick up the phone. It could be as simple as somebody looking for me to schedule something, or it could be somebody actively suicidal. So they're, really well trained on being ready for everything that could possibly be. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, it sounds crazy.
Yeah.
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 I've had coworkers who have been part of the 24-hour hotline.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We've definitely shared a lot of stuff with Planned Parenthood on a lot of different things. Yeah.
Cool. So is there, besides for that phone number, is there any other good way for people to contact your agency?
So we have a pretty active Facebook and Instagram, where we try to really push out a lot of information. Just quickly, like, here's some information or some stats or some phone numbers or things like that, especially on Instagram. And currently right now we're pushing out, with it being Pride Month, we're trying to push out a lot of breaking down, stereotypes about LGBTQ youth, domestic and sexual violence among the LGBTQ plus population, drug addiction, mental health stuff, to try to break through some stereotypes that people may have. So we try to use those platforms for education as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I will link to those in our description, so y'all can go check out their Facebook and Instagram pages. Make sure you like them. And great. Anything else you want to add before we end?
No, that's it. I just hope everybody's staying safe and having a good Pride Month, and just, keeping everything together as much as possible during COVID.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Cameron, for joining us.
Yeah.
It was great talking to you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, let's talk to you later.